so that any great conversations that you have about elections and election security can be had while we're recording by McMinnville Community Media. So I want to welcome everybody to another edition, the Friday edition of the Yamhill Leadership Roundtable. Today we have special guest, County Clerk Brian Van Bergen. We have Commissioner Rick Olson from the Yamhill County. We've got Joy Goodrum from the McMinnville Chamber of Commerce. We have Mayor Michael Cate from Amity. We have Council President Kelly Minke from the City of McMinnville. And we have Tyler Jansen, Chief of Staff to Representative Gomberg. Hello. I figured that since Representative Gomberg wasn't here, I should call you out, right? So thank you for joining us. You are muted, but it's okay. Okay, great. And we also have with us Representative Ron Noble. I won't keep doing this, but and so to provide Clerk Van Bergen a little bit of context, the Roundtable is a way of providing credible and accurate, timely information about coronavirus to all the different parts of Yamhill County. And I asked Brian Van Bergen to kind of give us an update on, in the midst of coronavirus, what is elections, general election looking like, as he's doing a lot of work, and I would love to have the community know about some of that work. So Brian Van Bergen, welcome.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that. How long do you normally have folks talk? 5 seconds or 5 minutes?
It depends upon if you're Representative Noble or if you're me. And I don't know which is which. So we would, yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you total all of my time up, it's a lot. But we would love to have you, just give us maybe the 5-minute, if we have questions, version of what's happening. What are some of the concerns that people are sharing with you? And what happened to the ballot box?
Well, let's start there. So the same thing happened to the ballot drop box in the McMinnville courthouse parking lot that happened to the Amity Library box, just at a different scale. So the good thing about most of our drop boxes is they're readily available to motorists. The bad thing about that is that they're readily available to motorists. And bad things happen when motorists get careless. So there was a car parked right next to our courthouse parking lot drop box, and that driver pulled away too quickly. The driver turned out of that lot, bounced up over the curb. It was quite a sight to see on the video, but took out that drop box. The box itself, the core component of the box, was not damaged much, but the legs that it's mounted on were mangled pretty bad. So we are in the process of fixing that, getting it repaired and ready to go back out in service. But we're taking the opportunity of replacing that particular box with an upgraded, larger, and more robust style. We happen to have the new style already in place at our Chemeketa location here in McMinnville, and the Newburgh Public Safety location in downtown Newburgh. So we're just replicating that same style here at the courthouse. So we're taking a smaller version of that and replacing the one in Amity that got damaged earlier. And to a lesser extent, the box in Carlton had a motor vehicle accident a number of months ago. So that one is being replaced as well. And while we're at it, we're also updating the box at the PCC campus in Newburgh and Jakewith Park in Newburgh. So 5 boxes are getting upgraded. And then back to your original question, what are we doing with COVID? Our office has been locked down and folks are coming in by appointment only. That's been great for most people. We've been able to serve everyone that's wanted or needed to come in and get their property recordings done. Marriage licenses, we performed dozens of marriage ceremonies this year. But that's going to change a little bit as elections start ramping up. So we're going to have more humans wanting to come into our lobby. So we are putting a new ballot drop box outside of our front door. So it used to be the folks who wanted to come drop off their ballot physically at our building used to walk in, drop it off in our lobby. Now we're actually moving a box right outside the front door, so folks can pull up next to the building, jump out if they want to, or have their passengers jump out and drop their ballot or ballots off in our new box that's going to be outside our front door. Doing a lot of things to keep our regular staff and our election board workers safe through the pandemic. Keeping everyone 6 feet apart, even when everyone's here. Signature verification, extracting the contents out of the ballot, scanning, resolving, all those things that we do every election. We've figured out a way to do all of that in our building, keeping everyone 6 feet apart, doing the things that we can and keeping them safe. Answering the super hot topic questions of the day. What about mail? One thing that everyone needs to remember is that a lot of the hoopla that they hear is about vote by mail in other places. It's not really about Oregon. Oregon has gone through many stages in the post office's history of changing how the post office handles mail, how many pieces of mail they get every day in a letter form compared to flats and boxes. If you think about what's going on this past 6 months with the virus, the post office is delivering huge volumes of boxes now. So their volumes of things have changed. So they necessarily need to change their equipment. They're not mailing as many letters home to grandma as they used to. They're delivering huge volumes of boxes. So they literally do need to change the equipment that they've been using to keep up with the demand. So there's all sorts of things that are truly going on and that they're necessary to meet the market demands. But a lot of people are taking those things out of proportion. And one of the things that happened last week, unfortunately the same day that someone ran over our box, was the post office was removing a bunch of duplicate collection boxes. So someone watching their social media feeds probably saw some boxes leave in Eugene and some boxes leave in Portland. And the Portland post office has assured us that none of those boxes were single boxes. They were only removed where there was a duplicate box. So if there are 2 or 3 boxes in the same spot, were never ever got filled, they were taking the second or the third box out just to consolidate and save time and money. And the Portland Post Office has assured us there has been no loss in any jurisdiction of a box. It's just been a reduction where there's been 2 or 3 in the same spot. So that's just been a natural thing that they do, but it just looks really dumb to do it as we're ramping up for the presidential election. So it's something that someone thought was a really great idea, and it would have been a great idea a year ago. Really dumb idea to do it right now. That's all.
Hey, Brian, this is Rick. One thing I think you might talk just a little bit about, because I think the citizens, it's very important that they understand this, is that from a chance of security and fraud, why don't you talk about our connectivity, or I should say the lack of connectivity with our vote tally system?
A great thing to remember all across Oregon in every county, no device that is scanning, adjudicating, or reporting election results is attached to any network configuration outside of that device. So in our specific case, all of our devices are located in our basement in a single room, and they only talk to each other. They're not connected to the county's network. They're not connected to anything in our building. They're certainly not connected to anything remotely. It is especially true that they're not connected to the internet. So there's no way anyone outside of those facilities can hack Oregon's election. And then the double safeguard for that is Oregon's vote by mail system is a paper-based system. Every ballot that comes to every elections office in Oregon is a piece of paper with those marks made by that voter. So if something were to happen and the electronic version gets whatever, we always have the paper version to go back to, and we can audit, and that's what we do after every general election is we go back and audit specific contests and confirm that humans will read that just like the software did. And that's one thing that we've actually added to our process every election. So now in Yamhill County, we're actually auditing every election, not just the general. So there's a number of things there that people really need to remember is we're not having voters in polling places with little handheld tablets making little marks and some mysterious thing happens with those ballots between the polling station and the results. We're actually getting all of our paper ballots in every county in Oregon. We're getting those into a central location, scanning on devices that are not connected to anything outside that room, and reporting those results. So.
Thanks, Brian. And another thing I think that's very important for people to realize is I had a email, and we've been emailing back and forth with Fritz Graham from Senator Wyden's office. And I think as they push more towards mail-in ballots nationwide, they don't realize that it's not something you can do in 5 months, 3 months later, turn on. It's a process. And, you know, I remember Senator Wyden once saying in the town hall I hosted of his that if you want to do it right, do it the Oregon way. And, you know, we've been working on this for, 20 years now or something, and we're still making changes all the time. So to think that all these other states could implement vote by mail and all that kind of things within 3 months of today is not a good idea. I think it's a good idea. I would like to see them start working on it 5, 6, 7 years ago and start going through the cycle process, because then I think we'd have a good chance. But I feel very uncomfortable now, not about the state of Oregon, and, you know, Colorado's pretty good, Arizona's pretty good, but for the states that have never used vote by mail or electronic voting, I really have a lot of issues of the validity of those particular votes, especially when there's no hard copy to back them up.
Those states are what caused the letter from the post office to the states, because many states have same-day registration or 1 week registration, and the post office was simply saying in most of those letters, state X, you cannot register someone to vote on election day, mail them a ballot on election day, and magically expect that voted mailed ballot back on the same day. So the letter from the post office was telling states, hey, your jurisdiction allows this. Physically impossible to mail out and mail back in that shorter window. So they just needed to get, and unfortunately, honestly, it was from the lawyer's office at the post office, not the marketing office. So you look at those letters and you say, you could have said that a little differently, but the truth of the matter is most of those letters were just covering the post office's selves so that the states had a good plan and could tell their citizens the right things, because there's just no way to get those, like Commissioner Olson was saying. Some states are doing this for the first time. We have our ballots formatted by the post office for their use. Many states that are starting this just now have no clue what to do. They have no idea how to get those things back and forth. They don't know where the logos go. They're sending letters out with just the name, address, and city, state, zip. They don't include the barcode and all those different things that speed up and make those addresses accurate. So people that are, like Commissioner's just saying, states that are just ramping up for the first time are really struggling with the rules, really struggling with educating their voters. But Oregon's been doing this over 20 years. We're pretty good at it.
Thank you, Kirk. Are there any other questions? I did have one that's a double Representative Noble and Clerk and Bergen question, which is that I saw in the Oregonian that Senator Knopp was demanding a bill in the next special session regarding extending. I think it was the hope was that it could be that ballots have to be postmarked by the election day. And I saw the comment from Bill Burgess, I think he's the head of the Clerks Association, but I was curious to hear what Representative Noble might think about that possibility, and also what the clerk, Ben Bergen, thinks of that. And whoever wants to unmute themselves first.
I haven't talked to Senator Knopp about his concept. It sounds like the difference is postmarked versus in the hands of the clerk on election day. And so I think it would change the dynamic for this. Okay, we're within the window where you have to drop them off as opposed to mail them. We may get a few more votes that way. People that don't feel like driving them in. But like I said, I'd have to see the bill and talk to the senator to get some specifics before I really could give any opinion on it.
And then Clerk, what do you think?
A number of things. The senator's concept is the better concept in my estimation to the other ones floating around about postmarks. It's better because his concept said, if your ballot has been postmarked, stamped, processed, some identifiable mark by the post office by the Saturday before Election Day, then if that reaches the elections office by X date after the election, then we'll count it. Or then we are allowed to count it. Today, the ballot has to be in the possession of elections office by 8 p.m. on election night. So the senator's proposal puts a line in the sand before election day, which gives voters in Burns, Oregon, the same opportunity that someone in downtown Portland has. So right now, if you walk into the Burns post office at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on election day, you're not even going to get your stamp on your ballot, even if you're getting it to them before 8 p.m. But if you're in some post offices in Portland, you can literally get that stamp on after the polls close on election day. So to get everyone in Oregon the same chance, you need to make that date before election day. My preference is the Saturday before, but those are things that certified smart people should really decide, not me.
Brian, my thinking about that is, and unlike maybe yours and Representative Noble's thinking is, I agree that the idea on paper looks good. What my question is, though, is because now since most of especially the small cities, even McMinnville, that most of our mail is postmarked out of Portland and not out of McMinnville, and unless you put it in local drop. So it goes to Portland to be sorted and postmarked and everything. But my real question is if they had till 4 days or 3 days after the election date, what does that do in those races that seem to be very close that will not be able to be called? They don't require a recount necessarily, but won't be able to count it. So what does that do regarding when election results, when the citizens will know what the election results are?
And the commissioner's question is one of the lengthy components of our Chair Burgess's response to some of this. Is it's great to consider the concept, but it really has real world applications in dozens of races every election. And the timelines are key. The timelines for all of these things start well before election day, because if you give X date a different timeline than this, and currently Oregon voters have 14 days after an election to fix their signature problems. So we can't really certify an election today until after that 14th day has passed. So here you go back to that same opportunity for a voter. The voter gets their ballot into us on time. We get the note down to that voter that their signature doesn't match. They have X number of days to fix their signature problem. But that voter that gets their ballot to us after election day, because we've accepted the postmark, and then we don't get their letter out to them that their signature has a problem, they magically have a really short window of time to get their signature resolved. And then also, all of those folks with signature issues they remain confidential for the first 7 days after election day. On the 8th day, every campaign in Oregon that has a close race has access to those names and numbers of voters with a signature issue. And that's what happened a few years ago with the GMO issue, is folks were knocking on the doors of people with signature issues saying, here, I'm here to help. Come into this van and I'll help you take your ballot and get your signature thing resolved. So it's all sorts of little things like this need to be really considered when you start talking about moving dates, because if we don't have all of our ballots in hand on election night, questions start swirling. Are we going to get 10 more ballots? Are we going to get 100 more ballots? Are we going to get 1,000 more ballots? And if you get 1,000 more ballots after election day, you're not going to know who's running ahead or who's even or anything, because really your elections office has no notion of how many ballots you're going to have total to consider. So it's a lot of different timelines to consider.
Great, thank you very much, Clerk Van Bergen. Are there other questions or concerns or thoughts for the clerk while we have him with us? All right, great, thank you very much. And I'm gonna switch around my order here and go to cities next, just to make sure that we get our 2 cities represented in here. Mayor Cape, what would you like to tell people in the community today? And welcome back. You missed one.
Oh, I think I missed 2 last Friday and then this Tuesday. So work has been picking up, and that's the big key. You know, as we're getting closer to September 8th, that's when staff are reporting back to school. Education is supposed to start on September 14th, that following Monday. So there's a lot of things gearing up for that. For me, with Salem Kaiser schools transportation, you know, we're looking at having the buses be very heavily involved in a number of activities, continuing with food distribution and also curriculum distribution and pickup. So that's going to be a much bigger role, I think, for us as we move forward. So, and we're just also trying to finalize all our work instructions for everybody to make sure it's a safe place for everybody to come to work. So that's really been a lot of our focuses. So at least for the school. I wanted to address the governor's press conference today. I gotta say, I was very disappointed in her and in her comments. She really called out elected officials to do more. And I'm sorry, I don't know what else more I can do in my city. I don't know what else more others in my area, my peers can do. I think we're doing what we can. I think she is a part of a legislature over the past several years, have taken away a lot of local elected officials' control and taken it to the state level. And now she's complaining that the local elected officials aren't doing as much as she wants. I don't think she can have it both ways. I also didn't really care for the way that she called out law enforcement. I think she could have done a much better job at that. So quite frankly, I was really disappointed in her press conference today. I understand her general message, and I can support the general message of, hey, you know, we need to be doing better. But the premise of that local elected officials need to do better, I'm sorry, that's a bunch of garbage in my mind. And especially since she's taken away a lot of our powers over the last, or she's been a part of a group of people that have taken away our powers over the last 10 to 15 years. You know, I can go back from when I first started being mayor 15 years ago to now. There's been a huge shift of regulation and powers and responsibilities taken away from the city and counties and placed on the state. And so I think she needs to own that. And I don't agree with how she presented that today. So if she wants us to do more, I think she needs to give us back more of our powers to do more. So that's my big message, I guess, for today. There was a point where she said she's worked with local elected officials. I don't know who that was because it certainly wasn't me. And I don't know anybody that was a part of that group. So it must have been a small group of people that she works with on a regular basis. And I don't know if that's, I don't know who that is, but it certainly wasn't me. And I don't think it's very reflective of the people here in Yamhill County who are elected officials and the work that we have been doing. And I don't think it's reflective of the large number of mayors that I've worked with across the state. So yeah, that's what I got to say. Anything?
Very insightful, Mayor Cape. I must say that it's really helpful having your perspective because you at one time were the head of the Oregon Mayors Association, right? Or I feel like there was some.
Yeah, I was the president in 2016 for the year. So, you know, I've had a great chance to work with a lot of mayors across the state. Not just ones in our county, but all across the state. You know, Beth Wojtowski is the current vice president. She'll serve as the president of the Oregon Mayors Association next year. Steve Calloway is the president currently. Last year, Brian Dalton, the mayor of Dallas, was the president. Over the last 15 years, there's been a lot of mayors in a lot of leadership positions, not just with the Oregon Mayors Association, but with the League of Oregon Cities. Here in Yamhill, Polk, Marion counties, we've had a lot of the people in those positions to lead. And my experience is that the governor either doesn't listen to us, doesn't respond to us, or doesn't include us. She's chosen maybe other mayors, and that's great, you know, but my experience is not as much with the people close in proximity to Salem. So kind of unfortunate in some ways, but you know, I also respect, you know, she's got to have the people that she chooses to work with, and she wants to trust them, and that's all good. But I just, if she's going to call out elected officials, I would hope she would have a better sense of what elected officials are doing. So.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I was on a call with county chairs and her yesterday, and I believe that I thought that the LOC was getting a call from her immediately afterwards, but I don't know who was on that. But I do know that the message or the response from county chairs was basically the same as what you have said, which is not the garbage part, but but they're pretty respectful with like you know, we got like 90% respectful, but it was a lot of you know, COVID fatigue. People just tired of having their elected officials tell them what to do. A lot of that, like some areas, they're seeing a lot of high compliance with the mandates. A lot of that.
She also called out, she didn't say which counties, but she said, you know, there's been counties where the elected commissioners in the counties are not following the guidelines, and so, you know, that maybe so, but I don't know that a press conference to all the news media is the way to handle that. So
yeah, I heard that very closely. I was like,
yeah. So she's kind of calling out a lot of people. You know, she's calling out county and state and all levels of local elected officials and law enforcement. She was pretty harsh on law enforcement, and I'm like, you know, you keep taking away their powers, but now you want them to do something. I think you need to probably check that and make sure you're giving them the power to do the things you're asking them to do. So.
Well, you know, Casey and Michael, I think Michael's spot on. I wasn't able to attend all the press conference because I had a NACO meeting going and another meeting going, but the two things in the short PowerPoint presentation deck that we got really struck close to home to me. Not only what you say, but a couple things she said is that the local jurisdiction, being the city and the counties, have to do a better job of enforcing the mask law, mask requirements and guidelines, and that all counties should immediately, wasn't need them, but immediately should perform an immediate restaurant, a health check of every restaurant and every tavern and every bar in Yamhill County, or any county. Well, my thing about it is where's the money going to come from to hire those people? Who's going to pay for it? Where are you going to find the people? And it's like, so she's put two more, what I'll say, mandates back on the local jurisdictions in the county without any availability to fund it or get the people to do it. And that was really concerning to mine.
Yeah, and on top of that, in the past 2 months or so, the answer has always been, well, OSHA's going to be there to support you and this and that. And now she's backing up on that and saying, well, Oregon OSHA is doing everything they can. And man, what a great job Oregon OSHA is doing. And it's the local elected officials that need to do more. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, that's a bunch of garbage. You can't say, oh, OSHA is going to be there to do it, and then say, oh, they're doing everything they can and you're not. I'm sorry. I don't know what else I can do as an elected official that I'm not already doing. And yeah, I'm sorry I have a lot of issues with her press conference today. So.
All right, thank you, Mayor. And I want to reiterate that that's what the chairs said to her. So you're not alone in that. Councillor Minke, on behalf of the city of McMinnville, what would you like to tell people in the community today? And welcome.
Welcome. It's nice to be here. Basically, what we've been doing this week, Wednesday, we had a work session where we're discussing the UGB remand, and the one particular aspect has many levels that we have to address. Remembering that we're going back to the 2003 remand. So we were looking at several different areas. We looked at affordable housing and the high cost to build affordable housing on lands that have more slope than others, which has been the expectation in past. So we're talking about possibly confronting that and bringing that up as an issue. Another one was serviceability and buildable land. Was how serviceable, how easy is it to reach this land? So we may be asking for a little bit of assistance from to take some of these lands out because they're unserviceable for us in a practical manner, particularly in regard to conservation easements. And then the last part of it had to do with hazards, earthquakes, floods, and landslides. So we have certain areas in McMinnville that are very high susceptible to these particular areas, particularly the West Hills. And generally speaking, we came down on the side of proceeding with caution, suggest low density development in these particular areas, and develop mitigation measures. And we are actually working on a hazard policy, which will eventually come to fore, but it will probably help us in this situation. Today, the mayor and I met with two young people who are interviewing for committees on the city council. One is a senior at the high school, and another one is a sophomore, and they're both very enthusiastic. This has been a long-term hope of Heather to get some junior citizens on our councils and help us with their perspective and hopefully grow them into being participants much as we are. Let's see, there was one other thing. Oh, the Parkway Committee. Mayor Hill isn't here, but he did a fabulous job of talking through the West Side Road issue. I don't want to go into a lot of detail here, but he did a great job of it. And I'm sure, Commissioner Cool, I'd like to chat with you about it sometime in the future myself. So thank you. Have a good day, all of you.
And it looks like Joya has a question, but Mayor Hill and I have a plan for next week to talk. So, Joya.
So thank you for your update, Councillor. Question, I I was called by somebody that sat in on the meeting the other night, and they were concerned about a discussion that was had over creating a basically a specialty license for apartments. And I wondered if you could take a minute to talk a little bit about that. If you're not comfortable, you know, it's just one of those things that I heard about, and it kind of concerned me a little bit. I understand what you're trying to do, but you know, once again, thank you.
Okay, one of the things that has come to us, particularly in the last few years, since we've been looking at codifying and particularly with the rental housing units, we've looked to Gresham, and that's a large part where we're borrowing our plans on. But one of the things that's come out really distinctly is where landlords are failing, and also, you know, tenants are failing to live up to their responsibilities. People are being put in places where, you know, they're renting places that are uninhabitable, basically, some of them pretty bad. And so what this idea is to it's basically kind of a 3-year plan, and it's right now it's put in place that we are just going to start inspection on a you know, when people come and comment to us, they want an inspection, we go and look, if it's a tenant or a landlord. It's an educational thing. There will be absolutely, as far as I know, well, there might be fees if they, you know, don't, I think they have like 60 days or even longer in some cases to respond to things where they're out of code. And, but the whole idea is to do this over a 3-year plan with the possible eventuality of it being a licensing type of situation. But that is definitely not in the offing at this point in time, and we'll come to council many times again before we actually do anything like that. So I wouldn't be concerned about it. It's more based on education and helping people get more equitable type of housing.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. You know, there are laws within the state, though, about, you know, slumlords, basically, for lack of a better word. So, you know, I don't know. I guess I want to understand more about why we're doing this when we already have laws about it, and you know, things in place for that. So, thank you. Thanks.
I think the main idea is that we are concerned that it's become an equity issue more than anything else. So, social justice.
I think one thing too, Joya, for you, if you're not aware, since we manage a large manufactured home park, ORS 190, which is the tenant landlord laws, addresses a lot of that very, very closely, of what the responsibilities of the owner are and what the responsibilities of the tenant are. And if they're a violation of ORS 190, then that's they can actually be fined.
And what the city's doing is picking it up and just codifying it. You know, normally when we do these things, we look to the state first and we codify in what they have to say. And we were happiest with Gresham's interpretation, although we will probably do some other changes of our own.
I guess my concern really is that we're going to be creating a special license for a specialty business, and then that's going to get passed on to the tenants, because we know that's what's going to happen, right? So
we're not creating any special licensing at this time, no.
Okay, but that is part of the plan at some point. No?
Discussed is not definitely in the plan.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to get those clarifications. Thank you. Especially when you hear something and you're, all right, thank you very much. Are there other questions or comments for Councilor Menke? All right, thank you very much. And I would love to go now. I want to acknowledge and welcome Dave Reckless from the McMinnville Downtown Association and Representative Gomberg for joined us just a little bit after. But right now I want to go to Representative Noble. Representative Noble, what would you like to tell people today? And then we'll have good questions for you.
I appreciate both your and Mayor Cape's assessment of the governor's press briefing today. I know, Commissioner, you had a briefing yesterday. Our briefing legislatively was at 9:15 this morning to talk about what the governor was going to talk about. So it was a quick morning for us to understand what where the metrics were, where we're headed, and still trying to catch up to that. but I think that the basic message is we've got two options. Either we increase our mask wearing, or she's looking at potentially closing businesses and increasing travel restrictions. I can tell you that many of the things that were brought up that you both talked about were discussed either directly with the governor's office or side conversations. And one of those that I think was alluded to is much of the discussion about COVID resources filtering out to rural Oregon, and yet then asking rural Oregon to comply with much of what the metro area is doing. So that's all part of what's being discussed. I think the biggest impact is without some changes, we're not looking at in-person schools, attending schools physically for quite some time, if at all, this next school year. And they didn't say that as plainly as I just said it, but when they're talking about 200 plus days to get under, if trends go the way they are going now, 200 plus days, we're looking at no school this year in a traditional classroom. I'm a bit confused. I think there's some confusion and lack of consistency coming from Salem in that are we talking about wearing masks and being 6 feet apart, or is it wearing masks or 6 feet apart? I know that there's already discussion in a lot of emails that I'm receiving about the governor and much of, well, everybody in her press briefing this morning. No one had masks on. And so from people believing it was masks and 6 feet, now it appears that the example is masks or 6 feet. The frustration, I guess, that if you could say frustration, is that if we're talking about trying to increase our compliance with masks, today would have been a good day for the governor to actually demonstrate that and assist our local officials in gaining more compliance and wearing masks and keeping social distancing. So I think we need to, and I know there's feedback that's been given for that. Consistency is a difficult thing across the board, both all of us individually and in our roles. So I don't think it's a bad thing to make that point and at least draw those things out when necessary. And the last thing I'd mention is most of you are aware that the $500 per person allocation that came out of the emergency board, and I'm sure Rep. Gomberg has much more information on this than I do. If you've seen our lines locally in McMinnville and On Point Credit Union, I was told today that actually they have a daily allocation. So my guess is it's probably all gone by now today, and there will be more lines at least for a couple more days. But the last I heard is we've made it through more than half of the money that's been allocated. So there will be people that will not receive that. And I think I'll just stop there, and I'm sure Rep. Gomberg probably has more information since he's on that board.
I have a question or comment, Commissioner, and this is, or maybe it's a comment for Representative Noble and Representative Gomberg. Representative Noble spoke very wisely about the lines that the lending institutions are taking part. I mean, this morning they were lined up from On Point all the way down to Goodwill, which is that's a long distance. But the amazing part about that was more than probably I'd say 60% of the people were not social distancing. They were not wearing masks. An excellent place for COVID to spread. So how do you get people like that when the state put out the program and you have people like that waiting in line, but they're not doing the social distancing and they're not wearing the masks? It's just asking for a bit bigger spread. Just my comment.
I believe that he said commissioner and then he said representative, so. Yes, I'm going to just say, yes, that is great. And I also want to acknowledge that I will go back to Representative Noble's comments and observations about the press conference, that it's really hard to be consistent. And sometimes we're not consistent. And I think that, at least for me, I try to own it when I'm not. And I bet that Representative Noble does the same when it's pointed out to him. But it looks like Representative Gomberg has unmuted himself, so I would love to hear from Representative Gomberg any additional or responses.
Well, first of all, I'm always pleased to see Representative Noble go first, since he represents so much more of Yamhill County than I do. You heard his report on the situation and potential situation for our schools. The only thing I want to add to that is we're concerned about the quality of education that our kids get, but we also need to be concerned that if they stay home, that too many parents are now having to make decisions about whether they take care of their own kids or provide childcare, and that is another example of how this pandemic ripples through our economy as our employers are trying to open up and get people back to work, and people are having to make very difficult decisions about whether they return to work or whether they stay home. Let me talk for a few minutes about the emergency board decision to help people who are waiting far too long for their unemployment benefits. And so I can't remember whether it was the last meeting or the meeting before, they all seem to run together, that we made the decision to provide $35 million in $500 increments to Oregonians who were still waiting for benefits. It took over a month to roll that program out. That's frustrating. Nothing's ever quite as simple as it seems. Some people might say, well, why wasn't this just managed through a state agency? And part of the answer there is that this was a legislative program, not an executive branch program. Any of you that are students of government understand that there's a separation of power issue there. So they contracted with private financial institutions. I need to stress that I'm grateful to the institutions that volunteered to participate. They did so at no cost. And it probably, well, I shouldn't say no cost. I should say they didn't bill the state anything. I'm sure they encountered their own costs in staffing and other ways to provide this important service to Oregonians. But gosh, can I just say succinctly, this is a mess. This is a mess. In some places, we've got people standing in line, camping out overnight for their turn for this free money. In other instances, we've got people that are making appointments, and now those appointments are a week out, and we may be out of money before they get their appointment. There was no bank in the Sheridan area that I represent, so anybody in Sheridan that wanted, excuse me, to apply for the funding had to drive to McMinnville. If you live in Lincoln City like I do, you had to drive an hour to Newport or over to McMinnville, about an hour the other direction, or an hour up to Tillamook to apply for the money. It's going very, very quickly. It was first available on Wednesday. I expect that we will be out of the funds by Monday. And as difficult as it is in those lines, and Commissioner Olson, you're absolutely correct that people should be behaving a little more responsibly as they're waiting in those lines. But God forbid that you're the last person in line for the money, and you have to deal with the person who's standing behind you and has been waiting just about as long as you have. This could have gone more smoothly. I hope you're sensing a little frustration in my voice. We need to support people who have been waiting for their benefits. Finally, we're beginning to get those benefits rolled out. This program was well intended, but it could have been implemented a little bit better.
Yeah, thank you for that perspective, Representative Gomberg, and thank you for your work on getting it to us. I remember when you announced it on this meeting, having just come from the e-board meeting, and we all wondered, how is it going to get to people? And now we know.
Well, here we are. Hey, I'm sorry some of our chamber managers aren't on today, as they more of them as they usually are. Well, we got one, but I mean, we usually have a few more. I was the keynote speaker today at the Chamber Ambassadors Convention that was supposed to be in Lincoln City. I have never done a keynote speech by Zoom before. You know, I had to watch the Democratic convention to get some tips. I was going to have a panel of flags behind me and a whole bunch of thumbnails of children clapping when I was done, and then make sure my wife came in from around the corner and gave me a congratulations kiss at the end of it. On the other hand, I will tell you that I've spoken to chambers for years and years and years. This is the first time I've done so without socks or shoes.
I think that we all congratulate you for that truly noble achievement. Excuse me for invoking your name in vain. But I just want to acknowledge that if the chamber event was held in Lincoln City, it would be at par for the course to not wear socks or shoes, wouldn't it? I mean, we're pretty casual there.
Pretty casual.
Yeah. Representative Noble has unmuted himself, so I want to see if he has something to add.
Yeah, I would like to add, and we've touched around some of the things going on around COVID and masks and getting money to people. I hope we just don't get lost in the people don't get lost in the fray here, because this is another source of frustration. As Representative Gomberg mentioned, we have a dilemma, parents do, with children being educated online virtually, work, home. How do they meet their working for their employer and still taking care of kids at the same time? That, and there are some people who are really hurting and that aren't going to see that $500 it may make the difference between being able to pay rent or food on the table. It just brings back to mind even more, and I know I mentioned it when we first started these roundtables, that we have two extremes. Some people are fine. If they're inconvenienced maybe, but they know that their housing is secure and they know that where their meals are coming from. And then there are many people who are very despondent right now. And I think we just need to, as leaders in this county, just remember that we're talking people. And even though that sometimes the situation or the messages that come down to talk about what we are to do or not to do can be frustrating, we're talking about people, and just want to push that out there and remind us as we're moving forward through our days.
Absolutely, Representative Noble. And you and I see a lot of emails from people, for example, who are really struggling with getting any traction at the unemployment or the employment department. And it's a real strong link to people that we don't see on a daily basis, just because of how we're supposed to keep away from other people about what's really happening in our county and our community. So thank you for that reminder. Do we have other comments or questions for Representative Noble and Representative Gomberg? All right, great. Thank you very much. I did want to come back to Clerk Van Bergen, because he has some very interesting, distressing information about the CARES Act funding specifically for elections.
That's what I'm for, is deliver the frustrating news. One of these days, I'm honestly going to have some good news, right? And I will share the good news like there's nobody's business. So one of the packages of federal funding that came out earlier this year was a huge volume of cash sent out to every state. So $400 million was sent out to every state. Oregon's portion of that was $5,636,292. One of the caveats there, though, was a state match. So Oregon could use that $5.6 million to help elections offices cope with COVID if the state picked up, I forget if it was 10 or 20% or whatever the story was. So that $506 million is sitting in Salem's bank account, but it's going to go back if we can't use it by December 31st. So it's going to collect a few shekels of interest in the meantime, and then they go back to Washington, D.C. because the state is not able to, for one reason or another, figure out how to spend that money. Unfortunately, we could have used a good deal of that to help our elections work a little smoother. But we're having to pick up the tab to do all the things that we're doing here locally. So it's unfortunate to see that happen. I honestly don't know if there's a mechanism in place now that we're so far into summertime. Don't know how many times e-board's going to come back. Don't know how many times the next special short session is going to be called. Whether or not that's going to be a topic of discussion. Very hard for them to do everything in a span of a few hours, but it's just painful to see. And I know a lot of people heard that was coming. I know some people realize it's already here. Very few people realize not a penny of that's going to be spent and it's all going to go back to Washington.
Well, thank you for that. Representative Gomberg, Noble, do you know how, do you know anything more about it? Okay. Well, we should talk more, Clerk. Oh, yeah. Oh, Representative Gomberg, he was on the unmute.
Well, I just wanted to say, thanks so much for mentioning more e-boards and more special sessions. I cringed at the mere reference. I can see Representative Noble feels the same way.
Yes. Okay. Well, we should. I'll try to find out. Clerk and I will talk some more, and we'll find out if the county has an ability to work on this too. The county besides the county clerk. Okay. Thank you very much for sharing that. And Clerk Van Bergen also noted today that we have. It's the deadline is coming up for filing for offices in Yamhill County.
One of the weird things that people always forget is that city council positions and mayor's filing officer is their city. A lot of people keep running into our office trying to file for city council and mayor positions, and it's the weird thing about this particular election is they don't. They need to go to their cities. So if Mayor Cape is out pounding the pavement trying to find new Mayor Cape, they just have a few days to get their applications into the city of Amity and make their way to the ballot. So cities have to wrap up their content and get it to us by the end of the month. So candidates need to jump at their local cities and see what positions are available, see how they can serve. Lots of activity in some cities, really scary limited activity in some other cities. So it's if y'all know anyone that's in a city that would like to serve, that's a great way of service.
And I'd like to note that one of the things that Clerk Van Bergen noted was that you get whoever, if there's nobody on the ballot, you get whoever has the most write-in names. And sometimes they probably can't even serve. I mean, do we have somebody named Mickey Mouse in Yamhill County? I don't know. Somebody quick has to change their name. Councilor Menke was going to add something to that.
I was just cheering on his work.
Got it. All right. I want to make sure that we get to today, so I'm going to go to Commissioner Olson. Commissioner Olson, what would you like to tell people today about coronavirus, state of the county? You are still muted. Can you hear me?
I think that today we discussed a lot of issues that a lot of people and even members on this call were not aware of, such as what the security that Clerk Van Bergen brought up, and the fact that now we know that if the state somehow doesn't match whatever the match is, that we have $5 million could be used for elections due to COVID, that we'll never have the capability of getting, which I think I'm always one of those that if you get 90% or 80% of what you want, and you can't come up with the other 20% or 10%, whatever it is, you don't deserve it. And that's, to me, from a private business even, that's not a very good bet on your money. If somebody came up as a private business, somebody came up and says, hey, I'll give you $1 million or I'll give you $10 million if you could come up with $1 million, I'd find some way. I don't know how, but I'd try to find some way to come up with that $1 million because I don't want to pass $9 million up. So, and I understand the situation in the states and, and everything, but I just find that just too bad. And then, so I really appreciate what they had to say. I appreciate the information we've covered regarding COVID. I, like you and Mayor Cape, do not like some of the things put out by the governor. I think a couple of them are even a little bogus, the way the numbers were figured, especially, and everybody probably aware that in Medford, the numbers reported by Medford or that are being used by OHA, and whether they went to Jackson County Public Health, I don't know, but even the hospital in Medford wrote a direct letter to the governor and OHA and said, where are these numbers coming from? That's not what's happening in our hospital. So it kind of says, well, how are these numbers really being tracked? Are they really even valid? And I don't know, but it is a concern, because if we're working with invalid numbers, it's like the restaurant inspections and everything that the governor would like to see. It would be nice to know, since all the restaurants open back up, if you do your tracing, how many actual cases were identified is coming through restaurants and bars and grills and beverage stations. I would think probably not very many. So there's a lot of focus being put on that, and not a lot of focus, not much was said about the care centers and everything. And now we just had last week another large outbreak at one of our local care centers, but that's not being talked too much about. But the fact about things that affect the economy, like restaurants and even the stores, now about closing down more of the stores, I think for the most part, all the stores and the restaurants are doing the excellent job. And I don't think that's where the biggest spread of the COVID's coming from. I think it's from, as Lindsay Manfred, our director, said, most of it's coming from family barbecues, neighborhood barbecues in backyards and everything. It's not coming from the business establishments. So that's all I have to say, Casey.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Olson. And I just sent an email to Director Manfred to see if she can join us to talk about how the county tallies numbers both for presumptive positive and negative cases for the county. So hopefully we can hear from her next Tuesday. Joya, you have a question.
I have a question. So, I heard earlier that the governor's talking about closing businesses, but most of the cases are coming from people having barbecues in their backyard. Why
Yes.
can she close businesses and not stop people from having a barbecue in their backyard? I'm just asking the question. It seems unfair to businesses to try and close them when they are not really the ones that are causing the problem.
Yeah.
I just like to understand. I just like to understand what the logic is. That's all. If you explain it to me, I will do my best to understand. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. I should have mentioned that when Mayor Cape and I were going back and forth, but on the call county chairs, that was another one of the things that was unanimous, kind of as it was across the board, as the county chairs were like, our businesses are complying, our customers in our businesses are complying. It doesn't make sense. We don't see outbreaks associated with, for example, retail businesses. So that was a very strong point that we all pressed on, especially from the east side, where the concern is if you close restaurants, there are very few places to get food then in some of the smaller communities. As well as having it be a tremendous impact to the county or the city. But one of the comments that was also shared from Chief of Staff while we were on that call was also that a lot of where they are seeing outbreaks or they're seeing cases that are associated with restaurants, for example, it's actually back of the house rather than customers. Because there's so much time spent together in really tight spaces. So I just want to reassure you, Joya, that I would say that there were 36 of us on the call with her yesterday, and every single one of us reiterated that point, and I heard her hear that. So it gave me some reassurance, at least. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And wanted to note that to add to that, this Friday's case counts for Yamhill County, we have 18 new cases, and I sent a quick message asking, are we seeing outbreaks associated with a business? Is it community spread? Do you know? And the reply back was that a couple of them are really specific to an outbreak, but the majority of those are community or uncertain spread. So, and that would go to both if you're having social gatherings so we can't find it, but it's also about not cooperating with contact tracing. And I think that's, from what I understand, there's a lot of challenges with complete contact tracing. In fact, I happened to bump into a new member today, a new contact tracer for the county, and he said that building trust with the person on the other side of the phone is his most important responsibility right now. It's really not to complete the case, it's to build trust. And I really appreciated hearing that perspective. And this was somebody who was brand new on the job. Okay, I want to make sure that we can get to both Joya and to Dave Ruckless. And I'm going to go with Dave just because you've only joined us once, and so welcome back. And I'd love to have you communicate to the city of, or the people of the city of McMinnville.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. Joya actually reached out to me and sent me the link, so that's why you're now seeing my face. Anyway, yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm here really to just address an update on the dine-out experience downtown, and it's kind of coincidental we'd be talking about restaurants and bars and things of that nature. My own experience and being kind of the patrol agent down there is that they're doing a very, very good job of trying to keep their environment as safe as they can and protect their customers and protect their employees. So I too kind of agree. I just think it's, reckless social behavior on behalf of some people that are determined to have these private get-togethers that turn into somewhat COVID nightmares. We're going to be entering our eighth weekend of doing the dine out, and at this point in time, I can't say enough to say that it's been really, really well received. The restaurant community in particular has extremely benefited from it. We just got done doing a survey of our participants, and there are roughly about 20 different restaurants and bars, depending upon each weekend, that are participating. And, without a doubt, they have said that it has increased their business by a minimum of 25%. The table counts that are there, as well as chair counts, it's upwards of 60 extra tables out there and 120 chairs. And the difference is that it's, one of the things we wanted to look at was, are we just seeing a shift from inside to outside? And yes, we are seeing some of that, but I think what we're also seeing is that people are just more willing to go out and dine because they feel safer in an outdoor environment. And so that's really led to this being a really positive experience. We just announced through the News Register today that we will be extending the dine out for an additional 3 weekends through the month of September, which will give them a little bit more extra added time. We did consider some requests to go into October, but the truth of the matter is we start looking at the timetables and so forth, and realizing that sunset will be at 7 o'clock come the end of September. Things will start changing, and even today we've seen a few sprinkles out there. So hopefully those will hold off, and we'll get another dry experience like we have for each one so far. So it's been really good. We also did a retail survey, and because we want to make sure that we're not, doing something for one group downtown and then ignoring the other. And so far, we've had kind of a mixed result. There have been some people that have been negatively impacted because they feel their customer base is very used to having that curbside parking, and that is beneficial to the shopping experience. So we're going to be working on, the board and I have talked about different ways of working with that community during the month of September to try to drive more business in. Because if we can do that, then that leads us to the ability to consider this again in the future. So at this point in time, good news on that forefront. We're doing what we wanted to do, increase the footprint for the restaurants and give them a fighting chance to survive in what are pretty difficult times.
Yeah, thank you for that update. Joya has got a question or a comment for you.
I have another question. So I promised Commissioner Olson I would ask this question. Is there any opportunity that you would actually close on Thursday nights to allow the businesses that want to have breakfast on Friday morning to do that?
So I guess my response to that was originally when we were looking at this program, before we even got out and really, made it public, we were looking strictly at Friday and Saturday nights, okay? Then it became kind of clear, at least to me, that we wanted to give our breakfast lunch establishments a shot at being able to do some business as well. And that's why we extended it through the whole weekend. I think, it's like anything. You take steps and you try to do this in a manner that isn't rash or irresponsible. We will obviously, I think, if this is to be considered again, part of the thing we'll look at is all those types of options. But again, we're very sensitive to our retail members and making sure that this isn't adversely affecting them. And so, I think when it's all said and done after the 13 weeks are over, we'll sit together with a group of both parties and see if we can't come together to just see what the future beholds and what we might be able to pursue. So I totally understand. I'd like to have Friday morning breakfast downtown too.
Well, Dave, thank you for all of your work, really being the person downtown, keeping an eye on things and being the champion of both, vitality in that downtown landscape and also the safety person.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I look at it as like our product for McMinnville and even Yamhill County, and it's just an important thing to make sure that we do all we can to make it viable and make it a strong place, because it really is special. There's very few places like it around.
Yeah. And
Thanks for having me.
I must say that, when I heard that Thistle was going to reopen, it felt like, the world is reawakening. It's just a special place in my heart. So
yeah, absolutely.
And it was really sad seeing the closed storefront of it.
Yeah, I know, no doubt. And just so everyone knows, Serendipity opened today. So that's good news too. Yeah, we got ice cream downtown again.
Excellent. And with that, I will go to Joya Goodrum. What would you like to tell us today?
Are you saying I'm dessert?
Special.
Okay.
Serendipity.
I'll be dessert.
Serendipity.
I'm good with that. Yes, delighted. The Simpsons, who own Simpson Electric, and Becky Simpson has her accounting company. They bought Serendipity, and we are just so happy for them and super excited to have an ice cream shop again open on 3rd Street since it's been closed most of the summer, right? Which is unfortunate. So, but we're happy to have that back. 2 things. Okay, Lemonade Day. I'm going to say it one more time. Sorry, guys. It was fabulous. We didn't have as many kids out there. They were kind of scattered over town, but it was so exciting, and they were so happy to have people come and visit them. I had a lovely slushy, lemonade slushy on 3rd Street that was delicious and refreshing because it was very hot on Saturday. So just really proud of our kids, and we're looking forward to them reporting their results. Everyone who reports a result then gets their name thrown in a hat, and we pick a name and they win a bike. So, and it's a yellow bike, at least the last one was yellow. So we're totally excited about, presenting a bike to a kid again, a youth entrepreneur, and we're so thankful for the sponsors and our community for supporting us. The other thing I wanted to tell you was the city had the grant program, and unfortunately it was supposed to go live on Wednesday, but it's been held up. So just so people know, nothing's happened with it. It's just there's a problem with getting the application out there. So we're hoping it went live today, but it may not be till Monday. So we'll keep people posted on what's going on with that. But the grant was $200,000, and great opportunity for a business to get some financial support. Absolutely. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Joya. Joya, you sent me a really wonderful private message here about opportunity to work together.
Yes.
Are you bold enough to read it or say it to other people? I just feel like it's important in these challenging times to
What did I say?
put publicly those strong words of community.
Yeah, I said, it seems to me that this crisis is the perfect opportunity for us to look at how we work together. We cannot move forward unless we do it together. At least that is what I think is the great lesson of this time.
Okay.
I think it is.
I think so too. I was actually thinking, I feel like we should go out on that today.
Oh, thank you.
That it is the opportunity to build trust and to work together in a time that's really hard for everybody.
Yeah, we're in it together.
Yes, yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we will see you all on Tuesday.
Yes.
Thanks,
Bye,
Dave, for joining us. Thanks, Brian, for joining us.
Thank you.